former director of Kohelet Policy Forum. He's an Israeli activist as well. Ran, thank you so much for your time. How does Netanyahu get out of this mess?
Well, I'm not sure that he needs to get out of anything right now. He's an Israeli citizen, and he will go on trial. Israel is a country under law, so even the prime minister is under the law, but he also has his day in court. The people who are protesting are expressing what we have in a democracy, which is a right to protest. They represent maybe, I don't know, less than one seat in the Israeli parliament, but it's their right, and I encourage them to do as long as it's in the boundaries of the law.
So hold on, so you're saying that everything's okay for Benjamin Netanyahu? Surely, in his entire political career, he's never had a stack of so many problems, all that he has to confront, because obviously, as a leader, he wants to do his best for his country, but he has all of these problems. You're surely not saying that everything's fine.
I'm not saying that everything is fine, but I'm also not Netanyahu's attorney. I'm saying that right now Netanyahu is an Israeli citizen. He's also the prime minister, very proud to live in a democracy where everyone is accountable for what they do, but Netanyahu deserves his day in court. Right now he's accused of a crime. He's not guilty of a crime. And the fact that people are protesting against Netanyahu, that's fine. That's one of the beauties of democracy. I'm very happy that people have that ability, but it doesn't make them correct. And the fact that Netanyahu has struggles in creating a coalition, that has not changed since Israel was created. Again, that's one of the perks of having a democracy. It's very difficult to compromise sometimes with the ideology that you want to promote and the different parties that you're trying to build a coalition with. So obviously he has a lot to handle. But right now it seems that a lot of Israelis from the right and from the left are very happy with the fact that we apparently going to have official ties with the UAE.
No, sure. Listen, but there are other problems apart from the corruption trial. I completely understand that the court will decide about those three charges against him. But what about the fact that the coronavirus crisis seems to be becoming a bit more serious in the most recent days? When schools reopened, it led to an increased number of infections. The economy is suffering, like it has everywhere, because of the coronavirus pandemic as well. Unemployment is rising. These are issues that are not related to anything to do with the law. They're just something that any prime minister will have to deal with in the times we're living. The problems are heightened. So now Benjamin Netanyahu is in this coalition government with Benny Gantz. Do you think there's any way that possibly he might even quite like the idea of another election if the two men can't agree and their two parties agree on a budget?
Well, first of all, I think you're very correct. This COVID-19 crisis is affecting the whole world, and Israel is not an exception. In fact, I would say that the main reason why we have this unity government is because the people and our elected government's officials said we're going to have a unity government to face this pandemic. So that's probably one of the main reasons why we have this government. And it's probably one of the main reasons why both parties don't want to go to an election, because it will seem to the public as if they're not being very careful with this situation. However, for the right-wing chunk in Israel, the political right, it will be a very good chance to have a more right-wing government, because as time progresses, it seems that people, even though you have people in the protest who are, I would argue, most of them are tilted center and left, I would say that actually it's the right-wing chunk that is growing, the more right-wing parties that are more right than the Likud party. So in theory, if you will go to a fourth election, there is a chance that you will have a different type of government. Instead of a unity government, it will be a center-right government.
Have you heard any of these stories about a group of hardcore football fans from a local club, I think Beitar Jerusalem, if that's the way I pronounce it, that they are part of the protests against Netanyahu? It wouldn't be the first time that football supporters, especially the hardcore, because they're so well organized, are used as a political tool by opponents of a particular leader. Could that be happening in Israel right now? Have you heard these stories?
Yes, but I think you got the story a little bit confused. Usually the criticism towards the La Familia family, it's a hardcore, very, very right-wing organization with the Beitar Yerushalayim. It's not the whole team. It's a very small group of fans who are considered to be very radical to the right. And usually the criticism is that they're being very violent to the protesters themselves that are usually from the left. So that is the accusation. That's the La Familia group, which is, again, it's a very small group of fans of a soccer team. The accusation is that they are very violent towards the left-wing protesters. That's the discourse in Israel. But I have to say, obviously, I condemn all types of violence from the right and from the left. I just want to say it's a very small fringe of the Israeli society. Now, I live very close to the pictures that you're showing, to the protest, and again, I condemn all types of violence, but it's not a very large phenomenon in Israel. I would argue that while in other countries, including the United States and including many Western countries in Europe, where you can have protests that are very, very violent and you destroy public property, in Israel, I think that what we're seeing right now in these pictures, that's the maximum that you will see. You will see people who are being arrested by the police officers because they're not obeying the law, blocking roads, and so on and so forth. You would not see a lot of violence. And even between the political rivalry of the right and left, the violence, thank God, is very, very low.
Ran Bar-Yoshafat, thank you so much indeed for clearing up, especially that last point, and thanks for the analysis. Really appreciate it.